Hello, my name's Rob and welcome to SwiftSlots and welcome to this very special video. And at the top of this video, I'd like to give a huge thank you to Pendle Slot Racing for allowing me to do this. Now, a few months back, you may have seen that I did a full review of the Pendle Slot Racing Bond Bug. Then a few weeks after that, I took the Bond Bug body and I turned it into the four-wheeled version, the Webster Bug. Then I did a full build review and track test of that kit and it went extremely well. But at the end of that video, I thought there's a little bit of performance still left in this car. So I asked Pendle Slot Racing if I could take their standard Webster Bug kit and turn it into a bit of a track weapon, something Pikes Peak inspired. And they said, Rob, if you build it, we will market it for you. So there we are, we had the green light. So you may have seen a few weeks back, I took the standard Webster Bug body and I turned it into this racing version body. And that video went down really well. So this is the new video, the last one in the series, where we take the standard body and we marry it to the custom chassis that I've had tuned to my own liking. And here it is, the actual kit. So please join me on the table when we take this kit out. I'll show you all the parts, we're going to build it, and we're going to take it to the track, and we're going to see if I've turned it into the weapon I always hoped it would be. So when you receive your kit from Pendle Slot Racing, it will come in this very nice, sturdy, white presentation box. And inside the kit, you will receive well-wrapped goods just like this, and also a personalised SwiftSlots sticker from me with a personalised thank you on the back. Thank you, Rob, smiley face. Apologies for my handwriting, it's abysmal. This is about as good as it gets. So inside your box, you will receive an extremely nicely detailed Sprint Bug resin body. Now this particular one is my wife's, it's pull number 2. So there's the odd little blemish in it, which is fine for a second pull. And I will show you how to remove those in the video if yours has the odd little mark, but generally speaking, pretty good. So you will get a very nice body. Okay, so a quick interjection at this point in this video. After editing the section you're watching now, I noticed that the body that I used, pull number 2, doesn't look as good as it could do. Now I want to explain how moulding works roughly in a commercial setting. So pull number 1, which was this body here, this is my body. I pulled this in grey because grey shows up all the imperfections or problem areas that you might have in a brand new mould. The trouble is with moulding it in grey is you get little bits of discoloration along here, or at least I do with the resin and pigment that I use. And although there's absolutely nothing wrong with pull number 1 here, my own body, it doesn't present as well as it could from a retail point of view. When you're opening up the box for the first time, you want to see a really clean body in the slot car environment at least. So this is pull number 1, and as you can see, it's got a little bit of discoloration. So what I do then is I do a flush casting. So that means that I pour in a white resin and it flushes out all the little bits of grey that was in the first pull. And that's where my wife's car came in. So she had pull 2, which is a flush mould, and it gets rid of all the little bits of grey that is actually from pull 1. So this is a more typical pull from the mould as they were coming out after pull 2. And as you can see, it's actually really clean, and this is completely typical of the sort of body that you'll get in your kit. And then in another packet, you will receive the custom Sprint Bug chassis. I shall show you that in a moment. And you'll also receive an awesome wing, rear diffuser, driver and some wheel inserts in another packet. And in another packet you will receive your fittings pack, so you get a motor, gears and so on. We'll come back to that in a mo. Some awesome tyres. So these are F15 tyres, so you got all the grip in the world with Pendle Slot F15 tyres. More on that in a mo. And a lovely set of aluminium wheels, big monster wide ones for the rear and skinny slim ones for the front. And then, last of all, you will get the vacuum interior, a set of decals, and some headlights and tail lights. And here is the whole kit laid out. And as you can see, we've got a resin body, vacuum formed glass and interior, a decal set, front and rear lights, 3D printed chassis, alloy wheels, a tyre set, a wheel insert set, a front guide pack, a slim can 16K motor with brass pinion gear, a screw pack, a pair of hardened front and rear axles, a pair of nice brass bearings, a high quality 1mm offset crown gear, a resin driver, and a rear spoiler and a rear splitter, and my personal sticker. Okay, so let's start with this new 3D printed chassis that comes with the Sprint Bug. Now, Pendle Slot Racing already produced a chassis for their Bond Bug and their Webster Bug, and it was a very good platform. However, I wanted a lot more performance from my new Sprint Bug, so I asked Pendle Slot Racing if they would modify that chassis to my specifications, and they said they would, and this is the new chassis. So it does differ in a number of different ways from the other two standard chassis. So the first one you'll notice is it's got an allowance for a slim can motor. Now that's a big power step up from the standard motor that those other two chassis come with. Also, we got an allowance for a standard size gear because we're running standard size wheels, which means we got a lot more gear options and a lot faster speeds can be had from this chassis. Also, I've asked them to drop the motor down by 1mm, which means we can now use a 1mm offset gear, which obviously lowers the centre of gravity, which is going to help this car tremendously. Also, you'll notice on this particular chassis, we've got full sides to this chassis, which encloses the body, but also gives us some great area to put lead to improve the performance of this car. And because the body is so small, you only need one body mount at the front. So we've foregone the side mounting, which was a little bit fiddly to put on, for a simple one bolt in the front, and that is all you need. Also, we've got spacers on the front here. Now these outer spacers here are actually for your front wheels, and as you can see they're approximately 5mm long, so you get approximately 10mm overall of extra width, and the two thinner ones are for packing your front guide. So with that explained on the chassis, let's start building the chassis. Okay, so the first step in making your chassis is to prepare your motor. And for that, we need to trim the motor down to 37.5mm. So that's 37.5mm from the back of the motor to the end of the shaft. And to do that, I simply mark off the shaft with a Sharpie at 37.5mm and then put a 9-volt battery on the terminals of the motor, make the motor spin, and then bring in my Dremel and cut off the shaft using my Dremel. That's how I personally do it. I find it the most accurate and the cleanest way to do it, but there are other ways to do it if you prefer. I have a little video of me cutting this shaft just here. Once you've cut the shaft down and you put a little bit of emery paper on the end to smooth off the end of the shaft, you then need to put your pinion on, and you can push your pinion all the way home until there's a 1mm gap between the end of the motor and the back of the pinion. And for that, you can always use a 1mm drill that comes with most standard drill sets, just to check that setting. It's 1mm. Once you've got your motor trimmed and also the pinion fitting properly, you then need to take your silicone wire and cut it in half, as I've already done here. I've already cut this in half, and then you need to solder your wires to your motor. So once you've fitted the wires to your motor, you can then go ahead and screw the motor into the chassis using the 2 motor screws provided. Once your motor is fully screwed into your chassis, you can then go ahead and fit the rear bearings into the rear of the chassis, and they are a simple push fit into the chassis, making sure that you fit the large flange to the outside of the arm. And once the bearings are fully fitted in their correct orientation within the chassis, you can then go ahead and fit the rear axle and the crown gear. And once your rear axle and gear are fitted, it should look exactly like this, and it should run super smooth at that nice 1mm offset. So once we've done that, we can then move to the front of the chassis, and we can fit the 4 adjusting screws for the front axle, and those being these long ones just here. And once you've fitted your grub screws, they should look very similar to this, with approximately 2mm out the bottom and maybe 3mm out the top. We don't need to be too precise at this particular moment, because we're going to adjust all that later on in the build. So at this stage, we can simply go ahead and we can chop off the 2 large outer spacers. So we got the full width of the chassis available to us there. It's then just a simple case of fitting your axle, popping 1 spacer on each side of the axle, just like that, and then fitting your narrow front wheels fitted with the narrow tyres. So once you've finished fitting your front axle and wheels, it should look very similar to this, with the front axle somewhere in the middle of its adjustment. You should end up with a little bit of float. We can come back to that later on. We should end up with a very free turning set of front wheels. So now we've done the front wheels, we may as well put the back wheels on as well. And with the rear wheels and tyres fitted, you will now end up with a chassis just like this. So now the wheels and tyres are all on, we can now turn our attentions to the front end. And for that, we want to snip off these two front rings, and they are the spacers for the guide. There is a thin one and a thick one. At the moment, it doesn't really matter which one we use because we're going to adjust this chassis later on in the build when I get round to that point. But for now, we'll just put the thin one on the bottom and the thick one on the top of the guide, and we'll fit the guide in the standard way. So once you've finished fitting your guide, you should end up with a chassis very similar to this. And with the settings that I've just given you, the chassis should be fairly close to its final setup. That being, when you roll the back wheels, the front wheels will turn, but also they're very free to slip on the surface of the setup plate. We'll come back to an absolute final setup once the body is on. So talking of the body, now the chassis is finished, I think we'll now turn our attentions to painting the body. So before we start preparing the body for paint, it makes a lot of sense actually to dry fit the chassis to the body, just in case there are any alterations that you need to do. You don't really want to be making alterations to the body when it's completely finished in its finished paintwork. So the first thing of note, since I built the chassis, was I've actually changed these top two grub screws to short grub screws, and the long grub screws remain in the bottom of the chassis. And the setup that I've chosen is flush to the top of the two top grub screws. I've also removed all the shims from the bottom of the guide, and I've put one short shim in the top of the guide, but I've also left the screw slightly short or not fully screwed home to give me a little bit of nice vertical compensation like that. And doing it that way, that has actually set my chassis up with a very slight nose down inclination. And also, again, as you move the back wheels, the front wheels turn, but the front wheels are completely free to slip on the plate. There's very little resistance there, but they are definitely catching. And in that configuration, everything fits beautifully, and the body is absolutely 100% on the chassis, looking very, very level. So the only thing you now need to do is get the body fitting to the chassis using that one body screw. And as you can see, there's no hole drilled. There's a hole marked, but it's not drilled. So the way to do that is to put your chassis into your body and feel with your fingers and make sure that the chassis and the body and the tops of the wheels are all nice and flush. And then make sure that your chassis is nice and square within the body using the wheels as a guide, just sort of like that. Making sure that everything is nice and square, it all looks very even. And when you're happy, transfer a pencil mark in the top of the hole, just like that. Then you can take the chassis out and drill that little hole there. It's actually fallen exactly on the impression anyway. You can drill that to 1.8 millimeters and then pop in the body screw and then dry fit the chassis and make sure you're happy. So once you've drilled the body hole and you screwed the body down, you should end up with a nice level and square body on the chassis with really good wheel clearances, a nice level body to the ground, nothing rubbing, and everything clearing and looking exactly as it should be, with really even wheel poke on the front, and the back wheels should be just tucked underneath the rear arches. Okay, so now we've got the body completely fitted to the chassis and we know it fits well, we can now turn our attentions to prepping the body ready for paint. So these are the products that I recommend that you use when preparing your body for paint. So you want some very fine Scotch-Brite pad, which is available from any automotive store, some P600 wet and dry sandpaper, a scalpel, a file, a little tiny bit of car body filler, and some warm water with a little bit of dish soap in it. So the reason why I've chosen this body as our donor for showing you how to prepare the body is because I noticed when I cast this body, and I deliberately left it here, that there's actually an air bubble just in the back wing of this car just here. So if you do get a very small air bubble in your casting, and these are all handmade castings, so there's a chance that you might get the odd mark here and there. Just dig the hole out. I think there might be another one here as well. There is. So just dig out the hole so you create a much bigger problem than you initially had, and then simply mix up a little bit of car body filler with a little bit of hardener in there as well. And there we are, all filled and sanded down with 600 grit, wet and dry with a stick. And that 600 grit finish is perfect for paint. You don't need to go any further than that. Now I did choose this body because I knew it had these imperfections and I wanted to use this body as a demonstration tool. And my wife won't mind whatsoever that it's got a little bit of filler in there, but it serves as a good tool to show you how to do it if you had any little imperfections that you needed to sort out. So the next stage now is to run around all the seam lines and just make sure they're all perfect and they're also ready for paint. And that might just be your simple case of just rubbing your scalpel along the edges of the windows, maybe putting a little bit of sandpaper inside the arches or anything that might need doing like that. And once you're happy that all the seam lines are all sorted out and clean and tidy, you can then give it a wash in your warm soapy water. And then once you've done that, take your piece of Scotch-Brite, dip it in your water and then give the whole body a good scrub down, ready for paint. And once we've done that, we can go straight to primer. So now we have both of these bodies all prepped and ready for paint. And as you can see, I've made these little stands and I've screwed them on using the body screws provided in the kit. And once you finish painting the body, you can simply take that screw out and put it in thinners and use it as the proper body screw. That's not a problem. And at this point, it's always a good idea to wear rubber gloves because you don't want to be getting greasy fingers on these bodies before it goes to paint. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to put a quick coat of grey primer on the bodies. That shows up any imperfections. I'll attend to that imperfection and then I'll go back with the last coat of white primer and then we can go straight to body colour. And at this point I will now be filming the painting of my car because that is the subject of this video. So after a little bit of careful masking, painting and decal application, we now have a body ready for 2K clear coat. Now you may have noticed that a couple of the decals have gone or changed, and that's because the Castrol lettering was fighting too hard against the Alitalia paint scheme. Now I always intended this body to be Alitalia, but it's very close to Castrol, and with a couple of decals can change the look. And I felt this car had a little bit of bipolar going on with those two liveries fighting each other. So the Castrol had to go, sadly. On this topic of decals, if you want water slide decals for this car, Pendle Slot Racing do a very large range of water slide decals. But if you want something custom like I've got here, then you can always go to C&C Designes and ask Clive to design you a nice set of decals. He's got a very good website. It's well worth visiting the website just to see what you like from stock. But if you can't find anything from stock, you can actually custom make you water slide decals if you'd like. So let's crack on, let's get to the booth and get this body in 2K clear coat. This particular system is by Profix, and it's 50% hardener with 10% thinners. And you really must use a very, very high quality mask when you're laying down 2K, because it's extremely poisonous. So between my really good mask and my really powerful spray booth, I'm okay for occasional use. But if you put this stuff down regularly, you really do need a full respirator that's fresh air feed and all the rest of it. But whenever you do 2K, be very, very careful, read all the safety precautions, and make sure you do it in a vented, at least a very, very well ventilated area. Okay, so now it's time to turn our attentions to the glass and the interior. Now this is the part of any job that I personally find the most challenging, because you only get one shot at it. There's no going back from cutting the glass wrong, and there's no going back from cutting the interior wrong. So with regards to the interior, you've got a molded line that runs all the way around the edge of the interior, and on this particular one here I've highlighted it with a pencil. So simply follow that line and cut it out. One small omission on my part, you've got to notch into the dashboard here to clear the body post, and if you don't do that, you won't be able to get the interior in. But you don't have to be too fussy. It's very obvious how it goes. It goes just like that, and if you don't get it quite right, it doesn't matter, because you've got plenty of allowance. As you can see on the top there, you've got lots and lots of clearance behind the dashboard and under the body, so you've got a lot there to play with. And if you get it right, you get a body and interior looking just like that. It's all super neat and tidy. Now with regards cutting out this plastic, I personally recommend these Lexan scissors from Pendle Slot. Here's a straight pair and a curved pair. Now I've been using these on many jobs recently, and I found them to be personally excellent. So a little bit of a personal recommendation there. These scissors are really, really handy for cutting out this soft Lexan. So moving on to the glass. So the glass is obviously a trick in any build, and it's difficult to know where to cut it. So I thought I'd show you here just so that you've got a good heads up. Now with regards to the windscreen, leave as much as you can across the top, super easy. With regards to the A-pillars, come round that first 90 return and cut it about 1 millimeter back from that edge. Bearing in mind you've got the roll cage there, so you need to clear the roll cage. And on the bottom, you want to come round that first 90 and stop just in front of that second 90. And if you do that, you'll end up with a glass that fits the body really, really well, just like that, with plenty of gluing area at the top, plenty of overlap on the sides, but don't go too long on the bottom, otherwise you'll be hitting the dashboard of the interior. And with regards to side glass, now these are a little bit specialist as well. You come round to the first 90, stop somewhere between halfway between the first and second 90 down the A-pillar. Give yourself as much as you want across the bottom, give yourself as much as you want across the back, and across the top, come round the first 90, round the second 90, and then give yourself a little tiny lip. Now you've got to be careful with the side windows, because the roof is quite low to the actual top of the window, so you can't go too high on the top. But if you cut it exactly right, it'll fit just like that, and then it'll look great on the outside, and it'll tuck up behind that roll bar as well, as long as you get that A-pillar cut nice and tight. And with regards to the rear window, you come round that first angle and cut it somewhere on the flat between the first and second radius. Give yourself as much lip as you can on the bottom, and if you do it like that, you'll end up with a glass that fits absolutely perfectly in the back of the car, and you'll also have plenty there to glue on across the bottom. Now with regards sticking in your glass, I normally like to use this foil tape. Now you can use this foil tape for the interior, no problems at all, but in this particular job we don't have an awful lot of real estate to glue the glass to the body. So with regards to that, you can rough up the edge if you want to and put a bit of PVA on there PVA will stick this glass in nicely, but on the side I do a little bit of archery. So I found this glue, NPV. This is actually a flight or a fletching glue. It's absolutely amazing stuff. It'll glue to anything, carbon fiber, aluminium, fiberglass, it doesn't matter. It sticks it all, and it sticks feathers to the shafts of arrows extremely well. It's totally clear, and it's extremely grippy and extremely strong with a very small amount of flex. A little bit like canopy glue on steroids, but this actually shrinks back as well. So you can put a little bit on, it'll melt into both surfaces, glue extremely well, and it will shrink back and be completely clear, and it does a brilliant job. So if you want to get this in the UK, Merlin Archery sell it, or I don't know where else you'd buy it abroad, but that's where you get it from the UK. It's not particularly expensive, but it's well worth getting and well worth trying, and it will glue this glass into this body extremely well. So having said all that, let's get to cutting out one of these interiors, paint it all up, and get the glass and the interior into the body. So now the glass is all glued in and the interior is all painted, ready to go into the body. We now need a fixing solution to get the interior firmly fixed to the body. And for that, I like to use aluminium foil tape. You can buy it at any home improvement store. So what I do is I cut small squares, just like this. I fit them to the inside of the interior and then rub it down nice and tight with the cotton earbud. And then I shall set the interior into the body, get it exactly where I want it, and then simply use the cotton earbud to press the aluminium foil tape firmly down to the body to make sure it's well fixed. So let's do that. So now the body's almost finished, we can turn our attentions to finishing off the chassis. And for that, we're going to need to fit the wheel inserts. And as you can see, I've already painted a set here, and also fit some lead down these side pieces here that I've had designed into the chassis. Now, with regards lead, if you haven't got any and you want some, I sell this rather handy pack of 2mm thick lead on my website, picture just there. And with regards fitting the lead, what I would recommend is set your vernier gauge to 4mm and take a nice scribe down each side of the lead, just like that, and then place a straight edge on the scribed line that you've just made, and with a scalpel just scribe the lead once or twice down its full length, just like that. You want to do that on both sides, just like that. Now normally I would put this lead then into my vise and bend it in the vise, but for the sake of this video I'm going to use my wide pliers. So all you need to do is give it a little bit of a wiggle. So I'm doing it in stages here because it's not in my vise, but normally you could do this in one go. So you go back and forth, just give it a little bit of a wiggle, and it will snap off cleanly along that scribed line. Just like that. So now we've got a nice long piece of lead. Then for the next job, you want to cut this lead down to approximately 65mm in length. So if I pop it on my measuring gauge here, come back to 65mm and simply cut it, and you have one piece there, and then you may as well match up the other side, just like that. And then it's a simple case of folding it in half. So once it's folded in half, get your pliers, give it a good squeeze to make sure it's nice and flat. Same with the other one, just like that. And then you can fit these folded pieces of lead into your chassis down the side, just like that. And that will add approximately 10 grams of weight to your car, depending on how generous you've made your 4mm. You can bond this in with super glue if you're confident, or you can just put it in with some double-sided tape and it'll be absolutely fine. And that will give you approximately 10 grams of weight all the way down the chassis, and that will be a really good starting point on the track. Now you can always trim this back, and if you lift up one side because you folded it in half, you can always trim it back if you find it's got too much. If you trim a lot back and right the way back to the back of the wheels, you can put a little bit of bias towards the rear end. So that is how I would fit the lead. So with regards to that now done, we can now turn our attentions to fitting the inserts, getting the chassis on the body, and then we can hit the track. So there it is, the SwiftSlots Sprint bug, derived from the Webster bug, which came from the Bond bug. I hope you're keeping up. And as you saw, it goes extremely well. It's a sub 50-second car straight out the box, which is a ginormous performance increase on the standard Webster bug and obviously the Bond bug being standard small cars. This is obviously a full-blown race car with all of the full-blown race car parts. You've got alloy wheels, F15 rear tyres, a slotting plus guide, you've got the motor 1mm down offset, all adds to a massively performance chassis, and as you saw from the video, it goes extremely well. I mean, I would say that, wouldn't I? But you can see on the video, it runs incredibly well. It's very fast, it's very stable, it doesn't want to tip over, and it doesn't really want to slide. It's an absolutely fantastic car, and it's super smooth and super quick, as you saw, and I'm extremely pleased with it. And that 16k motor really does give loads of performance, especially on a small track. And this car, being so small, is ideally suited for the home builder and the home track, so you can get a really good handling car out of some really tight bends. And I must say, I'm very, very, very pleased with it. But if you did want some performance, more performance in fact, because this car has a standard long can motor in it, and there's only a 16k from standard, you can go all the way up to, I believe, 30k on a slim can motor, and that will give you all the performance that you're looking for. And all those motors are available from Pendle Slot Racing if you should choose to want to upgrade your motor when you buy your kit. I think 20,000 would be a nice place to start, or if you really want to get leery, you could put a 25k in it, and I think that would turn this car into something completely uncontrollable, but it would be your choice. And also with regards weight, I would indeed add the amount of weight that I added in my car in this video. I think it was around 12 grams. That's a really nice starting point. You could argue that you could put a little bit more weight in the back end, maybe an extra 3 or 4 grams towards the back, just to try and keep the back end even more planted, to get even more speed out of it, especially if you're going to put a really high performance motor in there. But always remember, if you add weight, you're taking it away from somewhere else. So I think the brakes might suffer a little bit if you add more weight to it. So the best thing to do is keep a happy balance between weight and performance, and I think you'll be very, very happy with this car. So as of now, this car is now available on the Pendle Slot Racing website, and if you've got any inquiries about it, Pendle Slot Racing's email is at the top of their website, so feel free to contact them for any extra inquiries you may have over and above this video. So, and again, thank you very much to Pendle Slot Racing for allowing me to do this, because it is a bit of a risk for them and a bit of a risk for me as well with regards to my time. So I really hope that you've enjoyed this sort of content, and if you have, maybe you'll subscribe, and if you could hit the little bell button, that will be awesome. So until the next time, thank you very much.